can tune into them.
Say that.
Sorry, that wasn't meant to be critical.
It's okay. You can criticize.
It was just bringing back reminiscences of my childhood, which is a long way away. You know, when you get to 70, you remember your childhood much clearer than what happened yesterday.
Okay, so we said that. Now we said, why is it that we ended with? Why is it that the candles extinguish? Some of them extinguish. We said the reason in a physical candle is because there's not enough air. There's not enough good air. No, but here we're talking about. Here is talking specifically about the fact that the candle is put into a deep place, and in the pit, there's not enough air.
Where are you holding?
Yeah, but we're after that.
Okay.
So he says the same thing happens.
There's no full stops, it's hard to find it.
Yeah. ועוד זאת שהאוויר הגס אשר שם מחבהו לגמרי, כמו. You see the asterisk on the כמו?
I don't see an asterisk anywhere.
Let me see.
That's before. What I just read. Okay.
כמו האדם בכסותו עליו כריות וכסותו. The same way that if a person would be covered by pillows and the covers.
You get up.
So no, you would find it hard to breathe. The air becomes heavy. כן כשכוח המתהווה גשמיות רוח הבהמה. So we said that we have two spirits within us. The spirit of the animal soul and the spirit of the divine soul. The spirit of the animal soul is constantly going down. It craves. Craves. Tava. So the spirit of the animal pushes down. בריבוי עוצם נקודת הלב. הרי זה היפוך רוח האדם העולה למעלה. And so you have a heavy heart. That's how people feel it. Yeah. That the animal soul is dragging you down. You even say it's like air drag. It's like
so you're not giving the Nefesh Bahamis any credit? It's not doing anything useful? It's only just...
Of course it just shouldn't be the one breathing. That's all. It shouldn't be leading. It should be following.
If there was no Nefesh Bahamis, then people wouldn't be having children.
It's not true.
They killed the Yitzhahara and everybody stopped having children. All the animals stopped...
Who said it's the same thing?
The Menorah.
They just weren't ready for the higher purpose. Who said it means the same thing? That at that time there wasn't enough understanding of the purpose. They hadn't yet built the Torah Shebaal Peh. That was before Torah Shebaal Peh.
So the Nefesh Bahamis has its good points?
It has very good points, but it can't lead. The main thing is that it shouldn't be the predominant.
So the Nefesh Elokis is what? The Nefesh Elokis is directing the way, so now what's the Nefesh Bahamis doing?
Pulling the weight.
Oh, it's like the second rower in a...
Yeah, in a crew. Exactly. The first rower is the one that steers, in a certain sense. I mean, really, the coxswain is the one that steers, but they're all the way in the front, right? The coxswain is completely backwards. They can't see where they're going. So
what happens to the people who get rid of the Yitzhahara? Like David Melech.
They still live.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying then what happens?
No, this I think we talked about that. You can't really get rid of it. You kill it for today, and then you get a new one tomorrow.
Okay.
It's on a day-by-day basis. So, again, the air, the metaphor here is that the air becomes heavy. And it's the same thing as the air, the spirit of the animal soul, which takes a person down. It's the opposite of the spirit of man in man, which is the divine spirit, which is pushing upwards, which is trying to ascend. And so therefore, what happens is also that when he's praying, which is the time that the divine soul rises up, it's pushed down. And so he doesn't receive, and we talked about this connection in between or and avir. the same word basically, just yad yud. But light and air are basically the same word. In fact, even in English, air is from avir, very clearly. And so it's from light. Really, air is from light. So the light of Hashem that comes upon a person depends on the spirit descending. And even if he's able to muster up some excitement, it's short-lasting, and he's extinguished very quickly. Because there's no fresh air. Hainu, what does fresh air represent? Hafshatot avot raot, that he's able to sublimate his negative affiliations, his negative affinities, his love for the wrong things.
Hafshatot is what?
Hafshatot, sublimation, abstraction. Hafshata means to take it out of its shell and to give it the right vessel. So the fact that a person has love for something, for food, like we said, if you can turn it into avodas Hashem, if everybody could turn eating into davening, they would treat it the same way that they treat davening. You do it 3 times a day. You don't do it 4 times a day. You certainly don't do it 5 times a day. You don't daven in between. You don't daven in between. You don't have small snacks of davening in between. Okay? So they would eat three times a day. They would eat exactly what they need. Okay? A lot in the morning, very little in the afternoon, and a little bit more at night.
Eat like a king in the morning,
Okay.
eat like a prince in the afternoon, eat like a pauper at night.
That's in terms of the variety, but in terms of the quantities, so in the morning you can have more, in the morning meal, and then as the day goes on you take less, and at night you can have a little bit more again, but not. כי אם יש לו ההפקרות והביטול מענייני העולם הזה, שלא לחפות ענייני עצמו, הב. So instead, instead of what should have happened, which is that he should forsake all the physicality, all the materialism of this world, not to want things for himself. And it's called have, give me. Okay, it's like the sound that a dog makes. From Mishlei. It says, Beha'alotcha shtei banot. Yeah. Have, give me. Hava lanu. Hava li banim. Have is to give me. To give. So specifically, have is from Proverbs. V'liyot libo nimshach achrei Hashem. And instead of his heart being drawn after Hashem, b'chinat kirut u'b'chinat ruach olah, even if he's cold about it, it's still fresh air that's rising. Meaning, if a person is drawn to Hashem instead of to materiality, even if he's cold about it, he's not passionate about it.
Let's see, if you're drawn to Hashem, then surely there is a warmth, otherwise you wouldn't be drawn to Hashem.
No, he says even if it's cold.
But I'm just asking, how can that be? If I were to say to a normal person, listen, you go to church, you either go to the football match or come to shul. Person will usually go to the football match, right? In order to turn out going to shul, he has to have now some enthusiasm for going to shul.
They need to have a big screen TV in shul, and then he'll come watch it.
Well, he doesn't, right? So he comes because he's convinced now that going to shul is better than going to the football match. How can that be with no enthusiasm?
You see, I don't know. You tell me. How come everybody goes to shul without enthusiasm?
So then how is it working?
It's still better. It's still better than being drawn only to materiality.
Why are people going to shul if there is no enthusiasm? It's a contradiction.
Because it's a breath of fresh air that you don't have to deal with the material all the time. It's still fresh air. It's just without warmth. But it's a break from the drudgery of this world.
So
that's really why most people go.
You're going to meet the guys.
You're going to get away from your job. You're going to get away from your worries.
JFK.
Just for
Kiddush.
Yeah. You're going to eat Kiddush because it's a way to meet people. And it's all these things which are fine as long as what? As you're not drowning in the sea of materialism. So that's what it means to be cold about it, because you don't get it, you don't understand what it can give you. So, הנה עניין ההטבה של הנרות בנפש אלוקית שיאיר בפנימיות הלב אינה אלא על ידי הרצון של הנפש שהתפשטות בחינת עצמיות הנפש ובבחינת בלי גבול של הנפש. So he says the only way that you can better, meaning relight the candles, is by exercising the will. And the will is a extension of the substance of the soul. Very important statement. If I would say, like, what is, again, you can read Maimarim from the perspective of content, and you can also read them from the perspective of language. So he just said a statement which is very, very complex. And I don't know how many times before he had said something like this. הרצון של הנפש הוא התפשטות בחינת עצמיות הנפש. What does this mean?
It's a good question.
That the will is like an extension of the substance of the soul, of the very essence of the soul. And the will represents an extension of this higher will, obviously, which is coming from above. So if a person has real will to serve Hashem, that's coming from the essence of his soul.
Which is from where?
From the essence, from Atzmi. And there's no end to it, it's unlimited. That's where the soul is unlimited. So it's coming, in other words, if I would say this in Kabbalistic terminology, it's Atik affecting Arich. It's the part of this crown which is unlimited, which is Atik, affecting the part that is limited and becomes will, which is Arich.
This is all the Nefesh Elokis.
Sure, exactly.
What's the Nefesh Bahamis doing when his roots and is pulling you out? Fighting.
No, not necessarily. It can push. It can carry you. It doesn't have to fight. If you're trying to overcome your affinity for materialism, so there's a fight. But if the animal soul is in its right place, and it's there to assist, so on the contrary, it push you up.
How'd you get it there? How'd you get it in its right place?
Work on it a long time. You have to become convinced that divorcing yourself from the pursuit of materialism is avodas Hashem. That's what it means to serve Hashem. As long as you're still pursuing materialism for its own sake, and not for the sake of what you want to do. So, told me a very, very wealthy doctor once told me. He said like this, and I think this is pretty. It's the case for many, many people. I don't know if it's the case for everybody, but it's the case for many people. He said, whatever I've wanted to do, Hashem has given me money for. But I had to really want to do it. And he did some pretty expensive things in his life. And he's still alive. He came to Yerushalayim like 10 years ago. He built a $15 million house. So he was a very good doctor. He had a lot of, clients and whatever, but he wasn't super rich. But he said, if I really want to do something, I want to move to Yerushalayim, this is how I want to live here, so Hashem will help me. And that's exactly what happened. And he had enough money for it. Anyway, you can't pursue it for its own end. You can pursue materiality because you need it to be able to turn it into something spiritual.
Unless you're kidding yourself.
Of course, that's why we all fall, because we convince ourselves that I'm trying to do something spiritual.
The minimum that I need in order to
Right.
live.
This was Reb Usher's Hanhaga, the way he guided people. It's the way that Rebbe Ginsburg guides people. I think it's the way that the Rebbe guided people also. That you have to make a true accounting. What do you need in order to live? And you'll see that you'll have that. Anything beyond that, you have to really think, can I really do this? Do I really want to do this?
Leah and Hara, Baruch Hashem, we had 7 kids. And when I first started working, after leaving Canada, we had a very poor income. After the first kid was born, our income went up. After the second kid was born, our income went up again. And I went through, read through 7 kids. Every single time when I had a kid, Coach Baruch sent more money. Just like,
out of nowhere. And you don't know where it came from.
Another daga, another tosefet, another this. But you have to be blind not to see. Hashem was saying, okay, you need more money to raise these children. So here it is. It was like coming on the silver platter.
Well, it's not a silver platter. You still have to work. But because you're doing it within reason, you're not saying you don't have to live like a pauper unless you're a real tzaddik and you don't want to enjoy this world for some reason. I don't know what. But if you're a normal person and you say within reason, this is what I need, usually that's what you get. In any case. And so this will that's drawn down, again, this is bettering the candles. Okay? Meaning lighting them again. Mm-hmm. Because they were consumed, they extinguished because the person was stuck in his materiality. And that means that there was no good air for them to burn off of. The flame couldn't burn. So this new thing that he brings down is without end. It's unlimited. נגד כוחותיה שהם השכל והמידות שהם ההערות בעלמא. But the mind and the emotions, they're limited because they're only an illumination. They're not the substance of the soul itself. They're just light that comes out of the soul. And נמשכו בצמצום גדול מן הרצון. And they come in great contraction out of the will. אבל הרצון התפשטותו עד מאוד להיות התפשטות העצמיות כידוע. But the will is very, very powerful because it's infinite and therefore it extends in a substantial way. וידוע שהאריך אנפין מלובש ומצומצם תוך כל מידה ומידה. So we said the will is Arich Anpin. Okay.
What exactly does that statement mean?
The bottom half of the crown is in general called in Chassidus, in Kabbalah it's called Arich, in Chassidus it's called will. The top half of the crown is called Atik in Kabbalah, and it's called Tanug in Chassidus. Okay? So Arich is everywhere, inside all the midot. Umekif et kulam, and it surrounds all the emotions. What does this mean? It means that within Arich, we said Arich itself is unlimited. So there's a statement in the Zohar, actually a statement in the Alter Rebbe, it says elsewhere, that Za usof alamota ein sof. Zer Anpin, which is the emotions, is the end of the infinite worlds. What do we mean? That in emotions you can still find infinity. But below emotions you can't. Meaning in habits, in behavior, there's no infinity. Right? There's no such thing anymore. Even to keep a habit going, you have to expend more energy. But emotions, if you like ice cream, it's like you don't have to do anything. It's just there all the time. It's infinite. If you hate somebody, it's there all the time. You don't have to fuel it. It just exists by itself. There's an aspect of infinity to emotions that there isn't to habits, to behavior, and to the levushim of the nefesh. And it just lasts forever. You'll never get over it. You could not get over it. Okay? But in terms of habits, even the best habits, the ones that you've done for years, you can lose them in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Friedrich Rebbe said sometimes you have to work your whole life to change something.
Even sometimes one habit takes a whole life to change.
But you said you can get rid of it in 2 weeks.
Get rid of it, I mean, let's say you have a good habit. You brush your teeth every morning. Don't do it for 2 days, 3 days. You'll see that you'll stop brushing your teeth. As good a habit as it is. I'm talking about good habits. In terms of bad habits, it takes time to break them, but you can break them exactly because of that. Because they're not unlimited. They're not entrenched forever. I think he says this next sentence. בראות הזה דליבה הנקרא כתר דזה ומן הרצון So this, in the way it appears in Zayin, the emotions, it's called the crown of the emotions. And it's an extension of the will that comes from above, from the crown. הוא מן הרצון המקיף גדול על כוחות הנפש ולמעלה מן השכל והמידות שבו נקראים טורי חשוכה, שהם שם בהיעלם גדול. So the emotions are like they're called in the Zohar, not just in Zohar, in the Gemara also, they're called the mountains of darkness. What's the idea there? That they're dark, that you can't see where they came from, and they're mountains, meaning that they're separate. Turei de chashucha. It's like they rise up. You feel them rising up. שהם שם בהיעלם גדול והתפשטותם בהרחבה גדולה כמו הרצון. אך מפני התפשטות הרצון אין עיקר שם אהבה והתגלות, אלא בהיעלם גדול. So he says that even though the will comes in there and it affects them, the will is also concealed. ושיאמרו המידות שבהתגלות הנמשכים בצמצום מן השכל צריך להיטיבם ולחדשם ממול פני המנורה. So therefore, even the emotions, because here the emotions are coming out of the will. They're not the natural emotions. Natural emotions by themselves have an infinite aspect to them.
What's a natural emotion?
It's what you were born with, what's innate. But here we're talking about emotions that were created by your will. Meaning, I convince myself, my will tells me that I should love, vegetables. So the first day I eat vegetables, I even convince myself that I love their taste. So every day I have to renew the will to go and do that. If I don't renew the will to go and do it, I'll stop loving them. As if I ever loved them. So, in any case, you have to renew it. You have to renew your dedication to this affinity that you have, to your newfound friend here. צריך להיטיבם ולחדשם ממול פני המנורה, היינו מהמידות שברצון, שהוא בחינת הארת פנים דאריך אנפין, שהוא חגת שבו. So he says like this, that really all these emotions, they extend in the image of the menorah, it's like they're the central stem. The central stem from which everything extends out. So you have to light the candles, meaning you light the other emotions with them facing the central stem, because they're receiving from the central stem their power of will. Without that, they wouldn't burn. And they need that power of will in order to have a good flame that's fueled by good air and good oil, and therefore it's ascending. Okay? But if you don't have these things, if you're not getting the will from the central stem of the menorah, so eventually it dies out, and that's why they would extinguish in the middle of the night, because there wasn't enough good air. So what he's saying is that the menorah also reflected the state of the people. You can also use it as a never mind. I wasn't going to say anything smart. Okay. Yeah. And this is called, the central stem is called the face of Arich. El mul pnei menorah. So the menorah here is the main stem, and the face of it, they face the main stem. So in English, when you say it, you face the main stem. But in Hebrew, the way you say it is el mul, opposite the face of the menorah. That's how literally you would translate it into English. But it means the same thing. You're facing the main stem. So it turns out that the main stem has a phrase. And when you say it in Hebrew, the way you say it is that the main stem has a face. And that's the Chagat. That's the Chochmah, Gvura, and Tiferet of Arich. What does this mean? That it's the Chochmah, the Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet of Arich. And what does this mean? That in Arich itself, in the bottom half of the crown, the first three Sfirot, the the first three emotional sfirot, Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, they're called the face of Arich. That's what they're called. And from them everything comes. Va'ikar b'chinat Tiferet shebo. But the most important part of the emotions of the will is Tiferet, is beauty. Shebo hanikra rachamim rabim. And this is what's called great compassion.
What's the connection between Tiferet and Rachamim Rabim?
So first of all, the inner experience of Tiferet is always Rachamim. But Rachamim, regular Rachamim, is the Tiferet in Za. It's Tiferet as it is in the lower, in the small continents. Here we're talking about Tiferet of Arich. And Arich is a part of the crown. So like everything, you say Chesed Rav, or Rav Chesed, you mean the Chesed in the crown. When you say Rachamim Rabim, you mean Tiferet in the crown. Specifically in Arich, in the will.
What's the difference between that and
regular compassion is not will. Regular compassion is just a feeling of compassion. It's an experience of compassion. Here, it's the will to be compassionate.
So you've honed it, you've tuned it,
No, that's what, remember all the panim that you write in Chabad. How do you start?
Rachamim Rabim.
Na v'na le'oreh rachamim rabim. Makor rachamim. What do you mean? That my problem is what? That I don't have will to have compassion. What do I need to have compassion on my soul and my life? And instead, I spend my whole life running after material objects. So he says, I want to have will to pursue good things, and that comes from the main stem of the menorah. That's like the symbol. Okay.
I'm going.
What?
I'm going.
You're not going yet. Wait. But now you understand why there is the Reb Michel's nigun called Rachamim Rabim. Because that nigun, now if you want to actually do it, so if you're listening to the class or you're going to go in your car in a few minutes, so you put on Rachamim Rabim and try to feel why this is a nigun, this is a melody that's tapping from the arich, from my will, and bringing it down through the central through the central stem of the menorah, which would be like saying, by the way, I think it's the same thing as the Shmoneh Esrei. Okay, it's like you're bringing it down through the, why do I say Shmoneh Esrei? Through the spinal column. You're bringing will down through the body. Okay, so we'll end here.
So the my sister, very interesting message. On Friday, I went into the shop to show me a hummus. You ever been into show me a hummus? Pinchas is Nicholas. Pinchas is Nicholas on the way to Beit Zasha. It's a very cheap Nicholas.
Oh no.
And on Erev Shabbos, it's a
yeah, I know.
beer garden.
Right, yeah.
So there's people standing in line, and there's this poor kid who's, kid 25, 30. And he's done with the kuppah, and everybody's still on pay from the left and from the right in the beginning, and they're all screaming and they're all shouting. And these kids sitting there, Mamish looking like he was going to cry from all the balagan. So I came from there and I stand down and said to him, okay, Tov. Anishma.
I'm a human?
I promise you, his whole face changed. I'm not joking, I was amazed to see it. A big smile lit up on his face. He said, Baruch Hashem, good. I said, great. I said, okay, so please, can you do my cheshbon? Sure. And then I left, I wished him good Shabbos. And the guy changed from one person to another person. I don't know the guy. I don't like the guy. I don't dislike the guy. But here's the thing, the Rebbe says, I'm with Rachamim, here's somebody else. Right? See it, how a person reacts.
So that's El Mul Pnei HaMenorah.
That's sweet.
That's El Mul Pnei HaMenorah, that you brought down through your spinal column will to have compassion.
See, that's something I've been working on for 50 years.
So it comes down?
It doesn't always work. It's, sometimes you lose your temper and you shout. But basically, you do try to be nice to people.
So